Did I have denial? Yes. So my wife thought there was something going on and thought it was autism several months before I did, and I had every possible excuse. That's just a symptom that lots of people have, or, I was like that, or that's just being a kid.
The childcare centre said to us, we actually think he's got some issues socially. We were making excuses, we were in denial.
I think it's very common, and where it comes from is definitely a place of love. And I think parents sort of say to us, I'm concerned, what does this diagnosis mean? Where do we go from here? And I want my child to be happy, I want them to be okay, and I'm worried that this is not going to be the case for us.
I think we as clinicians just really need to understand where families are. This is really hard. It's really hard when somebody has expressed concerns about your child. It's really hard to think that there's something different or that their life might be harder than you had hoped it would be.
Autism denial for me was probably more this realisation about everything that I would now have to do so that my child could have a good life, or the life that I imagined he would have. And when I realised it wasn't going away, it was here, that I was the only one who could do anything about this and action it for my child, I just started booking things.
But some families do find it very difficult to accept the diagnosis and take a little bit longer to process and understand what's happening, and that's okay. So while they don't accept the label, or they feel that it may be due to other factors, they still accept the support and intervention and understand the value of that.
There's a grieving process that we go through, so they might need a bit more time to adjust to that. There might be, other things that they're going through themselves. The difficulty comes when you've got the one parent who's ready to get going, because we know time is precious, but then you've got another partner, another person that might be slowing the process down, and that can be frustrating.
Between the first time the word was mentioned and seeing the paediatrician and receiving the diagnosis was about 6 weeks. And in that period, there was fear of the diagnosis, denial of the potential that there was anything wrong. And as well as that, there was also fear of what that meant, because it was an unknown. But when your baby is 2 or 3 years old, it's probably a bit difficult to expect you as a parent to accept the different pathway from day one.
And I think it's also important to find the people that will gently say to you that, this is a thing that we actually need to address and we need to manage, because keeping us stuck in that place is not going to help our children, especially when we get the little ones who need to really get going with the early intervention side of things.
So parents that come from non-English speaking backgrounds, often the challenge for them is not understanding what a disability is, and often they have certain stigmas around mental health. It can also be around not knowing how to sort of traverse the disability arena once the child does have a diagnosis, and just being quite fearful of what that entails and what that means.
So sometimes we'll meet families where an official diagnosis isn't something that they have yet. There might be things that they are wondering about, are worried about. Sometimes there might be two parents and they might have different perspectives on that. I think it's really important to meet families where they're at and help support them through that process. The benefit of diagnosis probably is that it gives you a clear place to start exploring what are the options and how can we support our child, and a bit of a framework of understanding.
We help them to understand why this might be a reasonable description for their child, and we help them understand what positives that it might bring in terms of accessing services or accessing different supports that might be useful for them.
Sometimes we do get parents who wonder, has my child been diagnosed correctly? Is there a misdiagnosis here? And I think that's a really, really good point and thing to raise with a professional. I think the questions are valid. It's important to raise them with the people that are going to understand you and support you. However, also not keeping that as sort of the thing that holds us back from actually moving forward with intervention that we need.
I think the most important part in any child's life, but certainly someone with a disability, is that husband and wife partnerships are on the same page. And so you need to take so much time and effort to discuss, to make sure you're on the same page, because you start at very different points. Because once diagnosis comes, there is a lot of work, anxiety, guilt, things that you need to work out as a couple, and if you're not aligned going in, then it's even more difficult.
I really don't think there's any point fighting about it. So if you really think that you need to go down the screening and diagnosis route and your partner is not on board, then just do it anyway. You certainly don't need the approval of your wider family. I think that mothers do know best, and follow your instincts.
The diagnosis as such, is a process that you have to go through and to find out whether your child's on or off the spectrum. But in the meantime, it sort of doesn't matter whether or not they have a diagnosis. If your child is showing developmental delays, they need to be addressed as early as possible. So get started doing something while you're waiting for that assessment process to go through.